sponsor CSL Behring for supporting the gene therapy segment.
Yes.
All right, Amy Board.
Okay, Patrick, I can't wait to hear just your very wise.
I don't know about that. Don't frame it that way. No wisdom to be expected.
We've got one little bullet before we get to Clive and Lawrence.
Yeah, so just a few hours ago, the International Society on Thrombosis and Hemostasis, also known as ISTH, released a statement regarding the upcoming publication of their hemophilia treatment guidelines. These are you've heard us speak about this here before. In short, there is a lot of concern with some of what these guidelines state. As this 15-plus paragraph defensive, if I may, email highlights, this is still technically in draft. These are not published, and so some of the discussion that took place, such as at WFH, around these draft guidelines was critiqued and criticized in this email. Next month, the ISTH has an annual meeting that'll be in Bangkok. I know of numerous people from our greater hemophilia bleeding disorders orbit who intend to be there, some of whom specifically intend to be there to discuss this with the right decision makers and folks there. There's kind of two things, Amy, that are on my mind. Well, so number one, I hope that there's something in the next 6 weeks at that conference that might help move the ball forward in a productive way. Number two, if the guidelines are indeed published as substandard, that will have direct impact on patients around the world. If doctors and the payers around the world can point to guidelines.
And governments purchase clotting factor.
And they can say, these guidelines say X, therefore we're going to do X. And
Yeah.
if those are suboptimal, we have now validated people treating patients suboptimally all around the world. So it's a big problem. I am even more concerned, though, with something that their email states and things I've heard from our hemophilia folks about the nature of the relationship between ISTH, WFH, and other hemophilia organizations. There was one person who commented to me that they were afraid that what's happening now may cause irreparable harm between the ISTH and the greater hemophilia community. So there's a short-term issue to address, these guidelines. And then there's a long-term consideration that I think needs prioritization as well. If we're not working collaboratively, cohesively, globally together now and into the future, we're doomed.
Yeah.
So those are two updates as it relates to these upcoming guidelines, and hopefully maybe in the July episode on the heels of the June meeting, we'll have gotten some more insights. I'd be surprised if there's much more about this between now and the meeting in Bangkok, but I'm sure after that we'll hear some more.
And just to clarify, we've talked about the WHO guidelines, the World Health Organization guidelines, released suboptimal guidelines, I think at the beginning of this year or something like that, and that this is different. It's like the same vibe, but it's different?
Right, yeah. So they're different than the WHO guidelines. So within a period of a few weeks there, we had two different international bodies that were coming out with problematic directions or draft versions of problematic directions. So I'm sure there will be more, but not for some weeks yet, and hopefully for the better.
Well, thanks for that update, and we'll keep watching.
We'll stay tuned, and we'll let you know once there is more. So Amy Board, tell us a little bit more about Mason Buxton and the gene therapy segment on today's episode.
Well, we had Mason's dad, Jameson, on the segment last month.
We're working our way through the whole family.
I know, we're going to get the whole family. And Jameson is so unique because not only is he a parent of Mason, who has hemophilia B, he is the HTC director. He's the Hemophilia Treatment Center director there in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And Mason made the decision after his shared decision-making process with his physicians that he would like to move forward and to have the first commercially available gene therapy product. And so this is kind of his story about how he made that decision, what were some of his pros and cons, why he was so drawn to it, and also a little bit about how it was covered through our payer system, which I think is it's just kind of like a vortex of like, how is that going to work?
Yeah, that's important to hear about.
I should mention that Melody Joy Payne is one of our producers, and she very lovingly put this segment together and did the interview with Jameson and Mason. So we really want to thank her. And this segment is fantastic, and it's brought to you by CSL Behring, a global biotherapeutics leader focused on serving the rare disease community by providing innovative therapies. They now have a first-of-its-kind treatment for hemophilia B. To learn more about this treatment option, visit beyondhemb.com and download the B Support app from the App Store or Google Play to stay up to date on relevant information and to manage your treatment journey.
Sounds like your dad was a bit hesitant, and obviously knew that you were an adult and couldn't make the decision for you, but he sounded like he was really nervous in the beginning. So what was that decision making like on your end?
Well, it wasn't really that hard to agree to it. I mean, I went in for an annual appointment at the hemo center, and they mentioned the gene therapy to me. And I think it was probably a couple weeks later where I called them back and I said I wanted to do it. I didn't know my dad was hesitant, though. That's
really
kind of surprising.
I think. Yeah, it sounded like he was just like, from a dad's perspective, like, I don't really want my child to be a guinea pig per se.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you have any of that fear or hesitancy in the beginning, or was it mostly excitement?
I never thought that I would see this in my lifetime. The hemogenics, I never knew that was going to happen. So once I heard about it, it was very exciting. So I wanted to jump into it as fast as I could so I could get it done.
Yeah, I hear you have quite the fear of needles. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. I don't like needles. I never liked them. When I started infusing, I think I was about 7 when I started doing it myself. It was a little bit easier, but I was always very nervous about getting poked and sometimes almost passed out. Those are some great stories.
You'd think after all those pricks, you'd figure it out,
right?
But it's just you. Yeah.
Nope. It seemed like it was getting worse and worse. So yeah.
Was that one of the motivating factors for you behind doing the gene therapy?
That was a big one. I wanted to see what it would be like to live. I don't want to say live normal. I've always been normal, but have a life without bleeds. That was a very big thing. And also I have family members that have it too. So, we always talked about how we don't enjoy having it. I mean, it's always, it's always like that figure on your shoulder, that you got to always worry about. So I guess, yeah, it was the needles, but it was also, I wanted to live without having a bleeding disorder. I mean, I'll always have it, but I don't have to infuse and I don't get bleeds. So
your mom said there was a lot of buzz in the room that day. Like, everybody was feeling how much this could potentially not just impact you, but others with it.
Definitely.
So how has it changed from like before to now? Like what things are different for you in your life?
In June, it'll be my 1 year, I guess you could say, anniversary since I had the gene therapy. And I haven't had to infuse.
That's huge.
I have not had any bleeds. And before, if I were to go, let's say 2 weeks without infusing, with very little activity, not doing anything, being a couch potato, basically, I would still end up getting a bleed. And I have not had a bleed. And it's been fascinating, honestly, that I've never had one. I always thought I was going to get one. I bump my elbow at work. I'll squish my toe, my finger, whatever, and nothing. Nothing.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
very,
so has it allowed you to be more active? Are there things that you're able to do that you held back from before?
Yes, I am more active now for sure. And I've also noticed a change in my mood. I feel more uplifted.
What sorts of things do you enjoy? Like, is there something that's like a hobby that you would pursue?
I probably wouldn't pursue it as a career, but I do love to go fishing. That's one of my my biggest things that I do. I love to trout fish and be in the river, and that's something that I want to be able to do in the long term. I'd love to be able to go out fishing and still be able to cast, and not start having that pain in my body, and that's kind of, I guess, another reason why I think it's a good idea that I got the gene therapy, is for that long term joint health. I hike a lot. I hike a lot with my dog, and then hunting. We've always been an outdoor family, and once I became an adult and was able to drive and go out by myself, I've been doing it a lot. So those are like my biggest hobbies. I play video games too, but I just
yeah, no worries about bleeds there. Hopefully,
right? Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's been almost a year, so like, have you seen it improving over time? Did it work kind of right away? Is it becoming any less effective? Like, what has the course been for you since you've had this treatment?
This is really cool. So when I first got the gene therapy, I was doing my weekly blood draws to see where my factor levels were. So I'm hemophilia B, moderate, bleed like severe, 2%. So 2% is my normal level without having my factor to get me to my half-life of about 15%. I think my second week, we started noticing that it was going up. It was very slow. But once I was getting, 4 or 5 months into it, my levels were actually up into the high 20s, and then it was to the 30s. But now, they're at 40%, and I go to sleep knowing that. So it's pretty nice. And they just keep going up too. They're not going down. They're not fluctuating a lot. It just keeps going up and up and up. So it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Without
absolutely.
having to use. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. If I'm poking or prying too much, forgive me.
No, you're fine.
But I do want to ask because, like this being a functional cure, right? Like it doesn't actually change your DNA. So you could pass this on, like if you have children. Yeah. Is that something that you've been concerned about? Or do you feel like, with this being hopeful that you've had treatment that's been so effective that it may be less of a concern?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not really concerned about it. Even if we didn't have the gene therapy, if it didn't exist by the time I had kids, let's just say hypothetically, I wouldn't be worried about it. I'm not doing a shout out, but everybody at the Hemophilia Outreach Center is absolutely wonderful. And they're always extremely supportive. So I would have no problems, with trusting them with, all of that if I had a question. But also, living with it too, is another big thing. So if I were to pass it on and have a child and they have the bleeding disorder, I wouldn't be nervous about it. It's just like, oh, well, I got to do what my dad did.
Yeah, I got this down, Pat.
Yeah.
The routine, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know for sure 100%, but I do know that you had to be 18 to do the gene therapy.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yep. You had to be 18 to do it.
At least for now.
Right, for now, exactly.
Right.
I don't know what it's going to look like. It could be completely different, even a year from now.
Oh, I know. Imagine being able to get it as a child.
Yeah.
And like not only all of those years that you didn't have to get pricked by a needle, but like all of those years that you could have been out playing football and not worrying about it. And absolutely. There must have been there'd be a huge relief on the parents' shoulders too. So
for sure.
The implications of this is amazing. One thing that we did talk about is the concern that, gene therapies sometimes wear off. Like you might develop antibodies to the vector. So, like when or if that happens, do you have concern about that, about having to kind of go back to infusions?
No, it wouldn't really be a concern to have to do it. I wouldn't want to, and I'd be very sad if I had to, but it wouldn't be a concern. It would be a major letdown for sure.
And hopefully at that point they have another one anyways, and you'll just move on to the next one, right?
Yeah. But, like I said before, about having a child going to the hemo center, I mean, obviously I would be in great hands going there. So it's not going to be,
Right.
It wouldn't be the end of the world. It would still suck, but
it'd be a bummer. It'd be a big bummer.
For sure.
Yeah.